Nelson Neal. If SAF reaches its potential,
That's for the camera.
how will it compare to the ethanol boom of the early 2000s in terms of commodity prices? As a younger person who was not farming during that time, I'm curious how the two compare in terms of pipe and market potential.
Okay, that's a great question. It may be a little bit early to make prognostications, I think, on SAF. I think the technology to create it and produce it at a large scale, I think we're still coming into whatever that may look like. But I'll also say, and it can come from various feedstocks. You can make it out of soybean oil, out of alcohols, out of corn ethanol, and so forth. But if we are as an industry able to drive the feedstock conversation, I think it's got a tremendous amount of potential. You saw the stat that I put on the slide. It's like roughly 10% of the corn crop per 10% of aviation fuel just in the United States. So I think it's got the potential to be as big or even bigger if we continue down the path of this climate theme that we've had in the country. But I think it's got, if we get the technology right, and if it involves the feedstocks associated with soybeans and corn, I think it'd be a tremendous movement.
Okay, next question. Do we have any research on applying micros, PGRs, amino acids with fungicide for corn and soybeans, BT to R3, and R3 to R5 for soybeans?
Yeah, so absolutely. If you look at the book, when it comes to some of the late season applications, I realize they put product names out there, and I don't expect everybody to know what that product actually is. So that's why I put the QR codes in front of it. There is, and I'd like to say traditionally there's a synergistic reaction between all of them, but I can't. I'd be lying to you if I told you that's the case. And to think about this in a little bit more detail is, I'll just use an analogy of meat eating because that seems to be a common one. When I sit down and eat a lot, I feel miserable. So a lot of one thing is not always the best thing. And I get concerned on that because Brady's got a study in there that we did, and I think I can't remember what it was called, All In, or there's a name for it. I've got it in there. But we're just throwing the coals. We're pouring everything at it. We don't always see the response. We may see a yield response. The yield is not what we're looking for. We're looking for the return on investment response. And I've talked to some high yield growers, even some this year, that have said that, like, man, I throw a lot of stuff at it. I win the yield contest. It hasn't been profitable yet. So I think, yes, the initial answer to your question, yeah, it's in there. Do I always think it's the most profitable thing? I don't. I think there's a timing situation that we're continuing to learn and understand.
Thank you. Ms. Randy, what technology platforms will we see in the future from a seed standpoint for trades?
The question was around traits and technologies that in the future. I think that's kind of a loaded question, but I'll preface right to what are going to be very, very beneficial and directly affect you. I think that what we're going to see from a trait standpoint, hopefully, is going to be a revolutionary molecular event that actually controls water hemp and broadleaf weeds, right? Something new. Hopefully they kind of get that squared away, and there's always talk and chatter of it. It hasn't come true yet. And then from a trait standpoint, on the pest standpoint, I think everybody hopes that there was an aphid trait at this point, but I don't know if that's going to happen either. I think they've covered a lot of that. I really, truly, deep down, think that you're going to see traits in general, other than the herbicide standpoint, kind of stay plateaued. I think they're going to dive deeper and farther into genetic diversity and how that everything that you as a grower do from your farming practices are going to change. Growth spacing, populations, short corn could take hold because of that for more applications. Kind of diving back into what Kyle just answered, how can you feed the crop throughout the entire season with those proteins, amino acids, PGRs, fungicides, everything like that.
Okay, is the percentage of vegetarians in Indiana by choice or economics? Can we improve their economics and make them more aggressive?
Not Indiana.
Yes, so to be clear, I'm not sure the breakdown in Indiana.
Those Hoosiers.
Sorry, Indiana.
Right.
He's from Southern Illinois.
That is true. Not sure we can make that breakdown. Yeah, that's a really good question. I have to say, if I don't know the answer, I don't know the answer. I don't know whether the dietary trends in India are religious in nature or economic, or maybe a combination of all of it. Although I wouldn't see in that type of population, you know, a lot of the transformation that perhaps you saw in China, where you had a lot of. So in China, the protein of choice would be pork, and I think that's always been the case. And it was a situation of moving people into a higher protein consumption bracket. It's not that they weren't consuming it at all, but you were moving them up as their GDP grew. I don't know that we have quite the analogous situation in India as we saw in China, because they were indeed protein consumers. It was just a matter of moving them up the ladder of GDP. Again, I cannot comment on Indiana.
Glad I showed up to my roast. This one could be for all of us. Are we seeing any shifts in corn, soybean rotation? Or do we anticipate any? You know, from a profitability standpoint, I can't help but think if we're not seeing shifts today, we will see shifts of what's going to be planted and coming. You guys have been talking with growers on seed choices for, crop protection, drought choices. I can't help but think there's going to be some more corn on corn in the coming season.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I do think there's a little bit more corn on corn being planted, but it's not a massive switch or change, but, in the past, we've pretty much gotten everybody into a normal 50-50 type of operation, but there could be some more, and I think there will be some more corn on corn.
I think the same thing. I think the question I was asking these guys the other day, because I mean, even looking back from, for our own operation is how much tillage got done this fall. There were some that kept pushing and getting it all done no matter what. There's some felt like it was too dry and they were tired of putting chisel points on because it was burning up. So like, I know there's a lot of individuals I've talked to, they didn't get all the tillage done and they don't necessarily have the opportunity to do corn on corn, they feel like, because there's still standing stalks out there. I think there's ways to overcome that. But I mean, see what this report, I believe tomorrow comes out and some things of that nature that should, the way it sounds could be an influencer. I'm an optimist, as every one of you in this room is as well.
So I've had a lot of these conversations, similar to everybody else in this room. I would say that the main driver, obviously, is because of profitability, right? We sit there and we put our pencil to paper, and you can pencil and stay green with corn. Soybeans in the past, we always went soybeans in the past because it was a lower cost crop to put in the ground. It's not so much anymore. And plus, that conversation is very different when we're sitting there selling $12, $13 beans. We're selling $8 to $9 beans right now. Everybody's jumping right to corn right now, and I've been part of these conversations as a grower as well in the past. It always seems to find a way to shake its way out. We could jump into corn and everybody could be reporting more corn acres than meat acres. Start finding more acres back. We don't know. That's what I'm hoping. I know. That's what Kyle's hoping for. Everybody raised corn, so Kyle can raise beans.
Yeah, so I would just add that the rotational aspects aside, if you do look at the numbers economically, you're starting to get a heavy tilt towards corn. We've got a South American crop that's looking really good in terms of almost record good. And that's what continued to put pressure on soybean prices. You saw corn rallying up quite $1 from its harvest lows into that mid $4 range if you're looking at these 25 futures. So, I'd probably lean into maybe a significantly more higher number of corn acres in the U.S. than last year. As we stand right now, you guys make a good point. You can always shift back before the rubber meets the road.
do we have any helicopter versus airplane fungicide application trials?
I don't think that I have helicopter versus airplane. I know I've got airplane and or helicopter versus ground rig, but I don't. I mean, it's it's hard enough to make some of that stuff work that we do. So I guess my helicopter's now been a drone, but it's definitely something I can put on my agenda to do if people think that there is value behind it. I think when we get into the essence of a heavy disease pressure year, if we do get back to that, it's not going to matter what's out there as long as we're getting the right product on at the right time. But
Did we do any dry applications with the drone?
we did not this year. That is one thing. I guess when you say dry to ask that, do you mean from a cover crop basis or do you mean from an actual dry fertilizer basis? When you have a tank that can hold maybe 100 pounds, obviously you're not going to go very far with it. And it's going to be just an intensive process to try to do it. That's why the cover crop starts to make a little bit more sense, especially when you're looking at maybe a radish crop or something that's, you know, 5 pounds, 6 pound, 3 pound per acre versus, you know, 30, 40, 50 pounds the acre. It's just, it's not efficient.
Okay, next one, Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. Won't that create a larger market for the U.S.?
Can you say the question again in terms of the larger market?
What's that?
Can you repeat the question?
Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. Won't that create a larger market for the U.S.?
Oh, so presumably, I think the question is if production is off in the Ukraine, that creates greater opportunity for U.S. product. I think that's true overall, but you know, if they continue to produce and get a crop out there, you know, that product typically makes its way to market one way or the other, whether there's sanctions or not. They just find another avenue to move product. So I don't think it's sort of a panacea of all that ails in terms of export markets. I really don't.
Has anyone seen a rootworm population healthy enough in the past few years to want to use and price of SmartStack technology?
You got this one, or me too?
The question was if we have seen a ruminant population that warrants using fully treated SmartStack Pro, or Delex Chrome products. Regionally and locally, the answer is no. But if you get outside of that, there's always pockets around, correct? That they could be relevant, right? They could be heavy, we just haven't seen them. So I think it's always very, very important that you always do your scouting. Put a sticky trap up, ask your seeds to put a sticky trap up just so you keep monitoring it. The closest area that is very, very real is the I-80 corridor to the northern Illinois. They're actually dealing with northern rootworm beetles, not common western, what we have seen in the past. So, but that is the heavy, heavy infestation area. And a little side note on that one, SmartStack Pro was launched kind of directly for that area. And SmartStack Pro cannot protect against the population of northern rootworm beetles that they're dealing with there too. So, not the NLBL answer.
Thank you. Kyle, 15 versus 30-inch soybeans, yield difference. Do I need to plant 15-inch row to shade out the weeds or plant 30s to keep them from running over soil?
So, whatever you have for planter wise and is most efficient probably is the easy answer. My personal opinion is I'm a big fan of narrow row beans. I like I like just the placement of the beans in general. I like that they have a little more space that they can occupy in between each other. The shading effect obviously is a benefit, which is going to help on some weed suppression. Is it a savior? Absolutely not. I mean, we've seen what these waterhead can get through. I mean, it can not rain for weeks on end and the waterhead still thrives. So when it comes to narrow row beans, I am a big fan of it. And I realize that as we all went to bigger planters, you know, the 24s and the 36 row planters, and having a 30-inch row planter that was easy to do and run with, and it makes sense. But if it comes from a yield standpoint. I've done both, and I've seen scenarios where both work, but I'd say more times than not, to be honest with you, I've seen narrow beans. Doesn't have to be 15s, could be 20s, could be twins, has outperformed. But I could probably get some even better data from this year because I've got some guys that I work with that do both. So if whoever asks that wants to follow up with me later, I'm happy to get some of that information just to help that decision.
Thank you. In your seed plots from soybeans, did you notice early maturity planted early had some of the highest yields sitting in other company plot data?
Yeah, last couple of years, that's been a continued trend regardless of brand. The earlier maturity stuff has been really, really good. And it's kind of polar opposite. Randy kind of mentioned earlier, not that long ago, we were planting 4.1s and 3.8s, and 3.6 was the earliest bean you probably planted, and you planted your 4.1 first. That's one thing that stayed consistent with the data this year is no matter when we planted a bean plot, the earlier maturity grouping was generally better. And part of that could be the growing season obviously influencing that, but that's been a multi-year thing now here as of recent, across all the brands in the industry. The earlier maturity beans have been really performing.
I want to piggyback on that. The other thing I think everyone should think about also is when we're going out there in early planting, what are you typically grabbing first out of the shed? Because for a lot of us, it seems like anymore, well, we're going to plant early, man, I want to harvest something early, so I'm going to inherently go grab the earliest maturity. And I wonder how much of that also has to do with the performance. It's just because that's the selection out of the shed. What I don't know, I'm sure some of you do, I don't remember what year it was, maybe it was 19 when we were still harvesting, there's some harvesting beans. Now, there's a field of beans on Monticello Road that hasn't been harvested yet. Some of you probably went by it on the way over here. We don't want to go through that again. So just getting them out there, and I think there's some combinations there, personally.
We got somebody right now.
Oh,
Jared.
Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The March 23rd beans that were posted up here, they were 3.7s and they made 93. And he planted 2.9 that made 99. And he planted them 2 weeks later. Hope that answers it. I mean, March is a pretty extreme month to compare a planting date. But, and like I said, that's the one thing in our plot data is the plot's all planted in an hour. So the 2.7 to the 4.1 is planted within an hour of each other. So it's obviously been harvested at the same time. And those earlier beans have been better, regardless of planting date right now.
I think the industry also just saw it. I mean, we've been screaming for early maturity beans for a while, and we want them to perform. And got to give credit to the seed industry. They've brought some things out, and same thing with corn. Full season, yeah.
We're planting more
Yeah.
beans.
I mean, it absolutely, Matt, it could be. I mean, it's, there's so many variables that you can throw out there. It could be that those earlier season beans, all of a sudden the population gets reduced even more because all of a sudden you didn't plant the most ideal conditions, and we targeted 140,000 and now we're at 100,000, and that was a game changer. Yet we don't want to go out there with 100,000 because then we could end up with 60,000. So there's so many factors that play there, but you have to admit, weather is always such an influencing factor in the end. It just, I wish we could out predict it now, or just predict it in general.
In your drone versus ground rig versus airplane fungicide trial on corn, did you not see any tar spot?
We did not. No, absolutely not. So the one thing with tar spot, I can't sit down. So the one thing with tar spot I noticed this year is that in this particular area, there was some stuff that came in late, though where it faced the most, some guys in Indiana. I got some buddies in Indiana that it just wreaked havoc over there. But that was honestly one of the other goals, is that we're doing this on some later planted corn. This disease is coming in, these aphids are coming in, we're opening this thing up to something. And I hate to say this, but I was kind of hoping for tar spot. So we're saying about tar spot research, right? It's like you want to get it, but then you also don't want to get it. And if you look, I had done this for a couple of years, but in the book this year, I compared fungicides again. I compared 6 different corn fungicides 4 different soybean fungicides to each other. I go back to the same thing I said in that drone trial. In the absence of disease, did we really see what we wanted to see?
Okay, I got a question on here, me, on, disposing of old chemical, old herbicides. That is not a service that we offer, but that service is out there, whoever that is, get with me or Ben, where's Ben all, right there. After we help with that. Double checking, there was a lot of questions that come in while I was doing this and scrolling, trying to make sure I got them all.
There was a fertilizer one on Strip Hill that probably is not relevant to this, but if whoever wrote it wants to come and talk, discuss it with us, not something we were aware of, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, one thing, I'm trying to find that exact question. The one thing on that, the quality of fertilizer, different grades of fertilizer, it's not a lot. If you unload a rail car of MAC or a rail car of ANS, which both of those products contain nitrogen, and it's hot outside, it makes conversation, and it makes it a fun time unloading that rail car, which then, if there's any chunks that go in, we try to screen as much as we possibly can. And if those chunks get in there, they can not only cause trouble with the strip so they can cause trouble with an airport machine as well. So we try to minimize that as much as possible. The few that I had, in case we didn't have them, thank you for all the questions, very much so. My favorite topic, fertilizer versus grain. I can't emphasize the importance of this and how it can help growers. But when you buy fertilizer, you need to sell grain to hedge that purchase. It's the best way to hedge that purchase. We talked last night over dinner, Nelson, about the easy button. If we could go over that story again, that's a good one.
Yeah, so thanks, Kurt. I was relaying a story, and this one happened in Illinois. I was at a grower meeting, probably 20, 25 in the room, in Illinois, and just asked the question of the growers in the room. The question was something like this: if you could manage the price effectively, simultaneously of your fertilizer, your crop protection, your seed, those are generally known costs. The one that's got the volatility is going to be the fertilizer. And you're able to manage your grain prices at the same time. If you had an opportunity to hit the easy button and lock in a good margin, would you do it? So I think the question kind of went something like that, Kurt. And I looked around the room, similar as we did this morning, asked for a show of hands. And there was one person out of the 25 that raised their hand, probably 38 years old. He said, yes, I've hit that staple, quote unquote, staples easy button every single day. So then I probed a little bit further and said, well, why would the rest of you not want to do that? And, I got answers ranging from, well, you know what, I don't really look at my farm margin on an annual basis. I look at more of a 3-year average. Or, if my neighbor hits a home run, I don't want to miss out on that. In fact, I don't want to miss out on the home run at all. Very little commentary on the strikeout situation there. But, I think margins go like this, right? It's just a cycle, as we've already talked about, and on average, you end up positive after about 10 years or 15 years. Maybe it's a push, whether you involve yourself in risk management or not. But where it comes into play is that 1 year where, disastrous years will take you out of the game, and that's really where risk management truly comes into play. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I at least told the story.
For sure. What got this going for me was 2 years ago. I walked into Kyle's office. I just got done buying a bunch of ammonia, setting ammonia pricing, and I said, this doesn't make sense. Grain was here, ammonia was priced here. But here's the first thing I'm thinking is buy a lot. And we did, and we sold a lot early. 80+% of the nitrogen was bought at the farm gate, not just from UP, but across the Corn Belt, before combine started running. And I remember 20% of grain was sold. From a guy in my shoes, that's like, uh-oh. All my friends and family are standing on railroad tracks and trains coming from both directions. This is not going to end well. And hindsight's always 20/20, but here we are today. I can't emphasize enough some of the trends. We've got 18 years of data with fertilizer versus grain. One of the trends we see is if the numbers are stating that they're favorable to the farmer, then we see grain prices fall. It shows it in that data. I remember the exact numbers was ammonia. The record low was 88 bushels by a ton. 2 years ago in the summer, it was 111 bushels by a ton. So we didn't get to the record low. They're really close. So anytime we see that out of whack or it's very favorable to the grower, you start looking at the grain price off to the left, it starts to trend down. And what's some, I mean, when you take 18 years of data, you can learn a lot over time. What's some of the stuff you've seen, Nelson, from a bigger picture?
Well, I don't know, the history is always gonna repeat itself. You know, we talk a lot about geopolitical changes and, maybe the past history is not gonna be what should set your guys' pitch for the future. I know you asked me about phosphates, and pricing, and, I think we will continue to see tight markets in phosphates. We had the issue with the 2 hurricanes in Florida and Mosaic. China, I think, last seriously exported fertilizer on a grand scale. It's probably been, we continue to talk about China exporting, but they just haven't done it. And India has a demand for the product. We're not importing seemingly as much into the U.S. as we normally are. So I guess some of the reliable rules of thumb I wouldn't necessarily always count on. But if you can pencil out your crop and you can make a margin, I'd probably do that, right? And not let it remain open. If you have a chance to manage your risk, do it.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the 2 younger ones up front here, since I'm definitely the older guys, my hair's gray. And my eyesight's going, and my ears big anyway. We've been kicking around the idea as a management team about having a generational meeting, meaning having a grower meeting similar to this, just for the next generation of growers. What are your guys' thoughts on that? And Colin was talking in the back, looking around the room. We see a lot of new faces, which is awesome. We see a lot of younger folks.
How many of you in this room are 40 and under? Just put your hand up.
I don't get ready to make.
A lot more than last year.
All right, that is a lot more. Appreciate that.
What are your guys' thoughts? Well, I think it's important that we start to address that audience as well.
Yeah, I told Randy when we first got up here, it seems like there's a lot of younger people here than last year, which is a good thing. I'm tired of being the youngest guy at every room I go to, so let's keep that up. I think it'd be great. I'm sure Randy would agree. It's something we need to be having discussions about, and it would be good for United Prairie as well. We want to hear about what you think we should be doing as well, not just what we think you think is the right thing. So I think that would be a benefit for everybody.
Sorry, Kurt, I'm 40 years old, I'm not that young. Appreciate it though. I think like Mitch said, it'd be a good thing. There's gonna be some serious challenges, probably in the next 10 to 15 years. Succession planning's always been a big topic. feel like in the last 5 to maybe 15 years probably, right? Is that right? Because the age of an actual farmer nowadays is in that 55 to 65 range, right? You guys are getting close to the end. They say that a farmer never really quits until he dies, which is partially true, but the younger generation does have to step in at some point and start making those decisions, and they're going to learn, and they're going to get hit right in the face with it real quick. So they're going to have to learn and adapt very, very fast, and it's going to be different than when we're farming right now. It's different when Grandpa was farming for the guys in charge now making those decisions. So I think it'd be a great thing.
Sounds good. Well, Kyle started talking about stress, and we're going to end with stress, but I wasn't here for the last year's winter meeting. I was under the weather a little bit. And but 2 years ago, I spoke on stress as well, mental health. Does anybody remember what I said we're supposed to do with stress? What? That is correct. That was one of them. What it says in the Bible, what we're supposed to do with stress is lay it at God's feet. And let him handle it, and he will. One saying, I've got a lot of sayings, I'm not gonna worry, lunch is ready, I'm not gonna worry you all of them, but one saying I will say today, farming without faith is about like forgetting to put seed in pine boxes, not working out very well. Keep your faith. Y'all bow for a word of prayer. Precious Heavenly Master, thank you for this wonderful day. Lord, thank you for these growers, these employees, these vendors. Lord, I just ask that you bless them and bless the families at home and support them. Bless the food of our body. In your name I pray. Amen.
Hey, so what we're gonna do is, since a lot of that side of the room, go ahead and do with lunch first. What?